Hey guys, welcome back, and in this video we are going to talk about the Spring MVC Formatter. So before we go ahead, look at the content that we're going to cover today. Okay, so these are the contents that we're going to learn today as a part of Spring MVC Formatter. So first I'll tell you how to deal with the nested objects whenever you will be working with a Spring web application. And then I'll give you a problem and we'll understand why we need a formatter in our web application. Once we are done with that, I'll give you a deep dive on the print and the parse method, and these are the methods that we will be using whenever we will be writing a formatter of our own. Cool, so the next thing that I'm going to cover here is going to be the problem solving skill. Okay, so I'll give you a lot of scenarios. Okay, I'll give you different scenarios in this particular video, and your job will be figuring out the solution for that. Don't worry, I'm going to help you for this, but in the end of the video, I'll give you an assignment. Okay, so as I said, I'll be creating the situation or scenarios, and we're going to solve the scenarios by using a formatter. And we'll be developing or writing our own formatter in this particular video. And in the end, I'll give you an assignment, okay? I'll give you a problem, I'll give you a situation, and you need to solve that out, and you need to send your assignment to me, okay? And one of the most important thing is that we are going to start using the Eclipse debugger from this particular video. For the next few videos, we'll be covering through different concepts. It is pretty important for us to understand the flow of execution, how our program flow is going through, and we'll be tracking all these things by using the Eclipse debugger. So I'll definitely encourage you, whenever you are following this particular video, you also start debugging your program. Okay, so if you're already an experienced programmer, then I do not need to tell you that, but yes, if you are a fresher, then this is the time to start using the Eclipse debugger, okay? And I'm going to help you. I'm going to have some dedicated video on this as well. But right now, let's keep things simple. All right, so before we go ahead, I know that you have a lot of complaints against me, right? I was actually going through my mailbox yesterday and I found a lot of mails. Avilas, this has been 4 weeks. After only 3 weeks you have written that I haven't posted a video. Let me tell you this, guys. Right now, I'm working in 3 different projects, and if you include my own one, then it will be 4 projects, right? And apart from that, I need to record the videos for my training batches, and I also need to record the video for YouTube. And also, this is the lockdown period. I do not have anybody around me who can help me during the editing or during the video making process. So it is getting really tough for me to shoot a video. But anyhow, I have recorded 5 hours of content for you guys right now. So here it goes, 1.5 hours, and obviously, you'll be getting a lot more contents in the upcoming days. So you can expect 2-3 videos more in this month. Let me tell you that, 2 or 3 videos in this month, okay? That's what I can do for you. But the content that you are going to get, it will be more than 5 or 6 hours, okay? That's my promise to you. Cool, so I believe that you guys are going to understand me. I know you are also a developer. You also do a whole lot of work, so you can relate to my words, right? And also, I lost my tripod. I mean, whenever I was coming back to my hometown before the lockdown started, I just lost the tripod at airport. I just forgot to bring it. I just lost it near the KFC in the Bangalore airport. So right now my camera is sitting on a broken tripod. So if it is going to fall, then from tomorrow onwards I cannot shoot video. So a lot of problems around me. This lockdown is just ruining everything, but hopefully everything will be back to normal pretty soon. Cool, so without wasting any time, now let's get started. Okay, so in this section, we are going to understand how to deal with the nested objects in Spring MVC. So before we go into the formatter concept, let us set up the environment. Let us create some scenario where we can implement the formatter concept, okay? So today you are going to learn so much. If you are a fresher, if you do not have any experience in IT industry, then this video is going to be beneficial for you guys for sure. I only designed this particular video keeping the freshers in my mind, okay? So, from today onwards, we're going to start debugging. We're going to do a lot of stuff, and slowly we're going to progress. But I know that you guys have a good hold right now to understand a little bit of advanced thing. So let's get started with all these things. But before you go ahead with this particular video, if you can revise whatever the things you have done so far, we are in the episode 9, right? So whatever the things that you have done till the episode 8, just have a look on that, right? Just try to go with your code first, just revise all these things, and then you can start watching this particular video. Or if you remember everything, okay, if you haven't forget anything for the last 3 weeks, then that's good. Let's get started with the video, okay? And let's understand about the nested objects and how to deal with the nested objects in Spring MVC. Okay, so right now I am going to give you a new requirement. So this is the registration page that we have built a couple of episodes before. So now I want to include some new fields to this registration page. So let's say now I want to include the communication channel right here. So I need an email input and a phone input right here inside the registration form. Now you may ask me that, hey Vilas, what's the big deal? The way we have created these elements, we can similarly create 2 more, right? So it's not a big deal. So I definitely agree with you, but hold on, there is a catch with it. And with this thing, we are going to start today's tutorial. So for now, let me go to my Eclipse and let me open the backend code for this particular page. Okay, so right now this is the particular project that I'm working on, Spring Love Calculator. And I have deployed this particular project in my server already. You can see it's already started. So if I'll go to my Safari browser right now, this is my home page, right? So now let me say I'll go to my registration page by hitting /register. So this is my registration page, whatever I built so far. So the task is I'm going to create 2 new text boxes just right here called communication channel. That's right, but before that I need to make sure that what is the backend of this particular page, what is the DTO this particular page is using in the backend. Okay, so what is the URL for this specific page? So if I'll go to the URL and if I'm going to copy this /register, so /register is the URL this particular page is using. So I'll go to my Eclipse right now and I'll hit Command Shift L or Control Shift L and I'm going to paste it. Okay, so what this command is going to do is it is going to search for the /register text across your application. So right now in my entire application in 2 different places I have used this word called /register. So it is just searching the text, right? So this is cool, right? So even if you don't know where you are actually using this URL, you can simply type this URL here, or you can type in anything right here and it is going to find the appropriate match for you. So I want to go to the controller. So you can see there is a match found called /register inside the registration controller. So let me go there and it is going to land me inside the registration controller right now. Okay, so this is the handler method that we have used for our /register URL pattern, which is matches with our page URL pattern just right here. Okay, so this particular page is handled by this URL mapping. Okay, so now I want to find out what is the DTO this particular page, user registration page, which is this one. What is the DTO this particular page is using? This is this DTO, user registration DTO. If I'll go into this DTO, you can see all our fields are here that we have it in our registration form. So as I said you in the requirement, I'm going to add 2 more text field here. So now you can say me that, hey Vilas, we can create the email field, okay, the email field and the phone field just right here, and we are going to make changes on the JSP or the view which is user registration page. If I'll go into this particular page, we go into this. Once I come over here, you can ask me to add two more particular field right here after this div for phone and email, and that is done. You are basically right, but hold on. I'm going to show you a scenario right here which is going to come really handy whenever you are working in a real-time application. Okay, so here is the scenario. Let's imagine that this is the registration page, and here we have our email and phone, and also we have a contact us page. Okay, and in this page also we need the email and phone. Just think like, if somebody want to contact us, right, we can say them, okay, these are websites, our Facebook page, our Instagram handle, and you can connect to us with this. And also if you want a call from us, then why don't you give your email and phone? Okay, so you can ask the user to enter the email and phone in the contact us page. Okay, so now here is a scenario that we really need to care about, because we have the same field in our registration page, and also we have the same field in our contact us page. And what about if we have about us page? What about we have some different page which will also need the email and phone input? So at that time, if you're going to add the email and phone inside the registration DTO, that doesn't make sense. What about if I am going to include these two particular field inside a new DTO? Just look at here. If I'll go to Java resources, source main Java, and if I'll go to the API, here I'm keeping all my DTOs. So let me create a new DTO here. Let me create a new class. Let's say communication DTO. Okay, so let me do finish. Okay, so now I have a new DTO here. So let's say I'm going to keep my string here, string email, and let me make it private, and let me hit command 1 right here, and let me create the getter and setter for this email field. Now this is a separate DTO that I have created for my communication. So I can add the fax, the phone, the website, everything that I need for my user related to the communication channel just right here inside the DTO. And whatever the page that need a communication DTO, just like a contact us page, about us page, I can use this particular DTO inside that particular page. So what I mean by that, for an example, right now in our registration DTO, we have the requirement that we need the email and phone field. So what I'm going to do here, instead of creating something called private string email directly here, what I can do, I can write private communication DTO, and I'll write communication DTO, and that's it. And I'm going to create the getter and setter for this particular field. So I'll write create getter and setter, and I'll create the getter and setter after the gender, and I'll do OK. Cool. So right now we have our getter and setter ready, and now we can go to our registration page, which is the view that you are seeing right here. And here we want to enter two more things. So what I can do here, I can create a new div, and inside this div I can give a header, let's say a H2 or H3 here, and let me say this communication channel, or let me say communication for this now, and let me align this div to center because that's the thing that we're using across the platform. And after this, I am going to create a label for my email. Okay, so let me say email, and also I'm going to use the form input and the path equal to. So here is a big deal. So previously what we did, okay, for the gender, the path equal to gender. Okay, for the country, the path equal to country name, which is exactly matching with the property name, right? For the country, the path is country name. For the hobbies, the path is hobbies. For the gender, the path is gender, which is exactly matching to the form element property name. Just look at here. For gender, the path is gender itself. Okay, so if we go with the flow, our path should be communication DTO, because inside the communication DTO, if I'll do control click, inside the communication DTO we have the email field. Okay, so what I'll do here, the path equal to, I'll write communication DTO. Okay, cool. So right now let's test this out. So our communication DTO is exactly matching with the registration DTO property name, which is communication DTO. So if I'll go to my web browser right now, and if I do refresh this particular page, let's see what is going to happen. Cool, the page is loading fine, and we get our email field right here. So now let me go here. So let's say we have some default email entries. Let's say Selenium Express @gmail.com. Okay, let me do Command S, and let me check that whether the data binding is happening fine, and whether I am getting this particular email in my text box whenever I'm loading this particular page. So right now let me go ahead and refresh this page, and see here, nothing is happening, right? I'm not getting my email just right here, but my email, my default email that I've given is the Selenium Express @gmail.com. So what is the problem which is happening right here? So if I'll go to the user registration.jsp, here I did a mistake. So here in this page, I'm writing communication DTO here. So the meaning of that is, if we see here, the model attribute for this particular form is user registration, and inside the user registration, which is user registration DTO, we have this communication DTO, but inside this communication DTO we have our email, right? So the way the syntax we should write there is the communication DTO, which is my property name, and inside this communication DTO we have the email field. So let me go to my user registration dash page, and right now let me write here dot email. So inside this object, find out the email property, which is this property. Okay, so now let me save, and let me wait till my server reload the changes so that I can test this application. Okay, so now let me do a refresh here, and boom, now the data binding happened, right? And we get our Selenium Express @gmail.com, which is the default value of our email right here in our page. So now the data binding work, and you have found a new syntax here, right? And that's how you have to write if you have a nested object. We have an object inside the object. We have the email object, which is a string object inside the communication DTO object. So what will happen, whenever the page loads, Spring will call the get communication DTO method, and over the get communication it will call the get email method. So the syntax will be just like this: get communication DTO, and over this get email. Okay, so this is the syntax the Spring is going to run internally. Cool. So right now let me remove it, and let me do a Command S, and now let me bring in the Phon field, which is going to be really interesting right now. So I'll go to the communication DTO, and here let me remove the default value. This is just to show you, and right now I'm going to add a new field here called private string Phon. Okay, but hold on, this Phon is not going to be a string type right now. So if you see a phone number, right, in real time the phone number should be just like this: 91 something 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1, 10 digits, right? or for US 1 something. Okay, some numbers just right here. Okay, so now let's analyze. By looking into this number, what do you think? Okay, we have two parts of a phone number. The first one is the country code, which is 91 for India and 1 for USA, and the actual phone number of the user. So the phone is basically consists of two parts. So instead of making it a string, I can create a new class here called phone. And inside this particular phone class, I can include two different property called country code and the user phone number. Okay, so let me delete it and let me create a new class. Let me hit create class called phone. So my Eclipse is going to create a class. I'm going to keep this class inside the API project. That's where I'm keeping all my DTOs. I'll click on finish. Okay, so inside my phone class right now, I'm going to have two different string here, private string country code and another one private string user number. Okay, and let me generate the getter and setter for this. So right now I also want to generate a toString for this. So I'll write toString here, control space, and override the toString method. And right now I'm going to return here the get country code plus the get user number, okay, in the toString method. Okay, so right now our phone class is ready, and now let me go to the communication DTO, and here we have the email and phone, and now let me generate the getter and setter for this particular phone. Cool, so right now all our classes are ready. So this is what we have created so far. We have our registration DTO. Inside the registration DTO we have a communication DTO. The communication DTO contains two fields, email and phone. So the email is a string field and the phone has its own type, which is called phone, and we have created this phone class, and inside this phone we have the country code and the user number as its properties. Okay, so that's good. So right now if I'll go to the user registration page, so here I do need to create one more text input for the phone field, just like the email. Okay, so before we create one more text box here for phone, what I'm going to do here, let me test this out. Let's say if I'm going to enter some email just right here, and if I'm hitting register button, I need to carry that email and populate right here in the registration successful page. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, this particular page is ready. So if I go to my registration controller, you can see this is the handler method which is going to show us the registration success page. So if I'm going to go to the registration success page, if I'm going to do a Control Shift R, and if I'm going to double click on registration success page, here we go, we do have our page right here. So now let me give another break and let me write email here, and for the email I need to copy this line and let me paste it right here. And over here in the user registration object, if I'll go to the user registration DTO, inside the user registration DTO we have the communication DTO. So let me copy this property communication DTO and let me paste it right here. And inside the communication DTO, if I'll go to the communication DTO right now, inside this communication DTO we have the email field. So let me copy the email and let me paste it right here. Cool, so right now my expectation is if I'll go here and let me do a refresh. Okay, so right now let me enter some email. Let's say test@testmail.com, and if I'll do register, I should be able to see this particular property just right here. That means my data binding is happening fine. Cool, so this is working good. But what about the phone? Okay, so let me add the phone field right here in the user registration page. So let me copy the email and let me paste it right here, and let me change the label to phone. Let me delete the path. So for the email, the path is communication.dto.email. So what is going to be the path for the phone, right? So inside the user registration DTO, okay, we have the communication DTO again. So let me do Command C here, and let me go to the registration page. Let me do Command V dot, and inside the communication DTO we have the phone, right? So this is the variable. Let me copy this and let me paste it right here, and that's it. So now you might be asking me, hey Vilash, if you go to the user registration DTO, if you go to the communication DTO, if you go to the phone, this is the reference type. This is not a string type, because inside the phone itself we have two different string, country code and username. So you might be asking me to do something just like this, communication DTO.phone.country code. Okay, you might be thinking to do something just like this, but hold on. Inside the phone, if I'll go to the phone here we do have country code and the user number. We do have two different string, but I don't want two different text boxes for the phone. I want only one text box. For an example, if I'll go here, I'll just remove the country code just right here. So the data is going to be binded with the phone property, and if you're going to see here, the phone is a class, so I want to bind the data with the phone object, not to a particular string. So right now if I'm going to do something like this, communication DTO.phone, and if I'm going to do the same thing in the registration success page, let's say right now if I'll give another break, let me give another break right here, and let me say phone, and let me copy this, let me paste it right here, and let me say phone. Okay, so right now if I'll go to registration page, and if I'll do a refresh right now, I should be getting the phone field. I want exactly something just like this. I want only one text box here. I do not want two text boxes, one for the country code, one for the number. No, I want only one, right? So what I want right now, if I'm going to enter some email address, and if I'm going to add some phone number, let's say I want my user to add in this format. Let's say 91, this is my country code, and let's say my phone number is 223344556677. Okay, now let's say if I'm going to do a register, I want my user to see this data, that he has entered this as his phone number and this as his email. So if I do a register right now, see what is going to happen, and boom, we get a bad request. Now let's solve this error. So why we're getting this error? If I'll go to my console here, and if I'm going to check my console, you are going to see a new error, and this is going to be crazy. Okay, so we're getting a field error for the user registration object, and we're getting this error for the field called communication DTO, and inside the communication DTO we have a field called phone, and for this phone the data binding is not happening, and it has a rejected value, which is whatever the number that user entered, and it says type mismatch. Okay, a type mismatch dot user registration dot communication DTO dot phone. So this is the error that Spring MVC is giving us and letting us know that, hey Avilash, this is a very simple thing, I'm not able to convert this data. So whatever the data that user is entering here in the registration page, let's say he is entering a string here, right? This is simply a string. Whatever the data that user is entering here, all the data that the user is entering, these are just string, right? So whenever a user is giving a string, and whenever we are trying to do the data binding in the server end, if I go to the user registration controller, and right now I already told you that, so whenever the user will fill in all the details, then this is the handler method which is going to be get called, and obviously the data binding will happen here. So all the data that the user entered, that data will be binded to the user registration DTO page. So right now when the data binding is happened, we have already seen that all the value that we have inserted here for the user value that will be going to be binded with this one, and for the username that will be going to bind it with the username. And similarly for password, this is going to be a string that user is entering, but Spring is automatically converting the string to a character array. Let's say if we have an age text box here, okay, let me show you this thing. Let's say we have something here called private int age. Let me generate the getter and setter. So I have generated the getter and setter for the age, and if I go to the user registration dash page, and let's say if I'm going to develop the age field right here, let's say if I'm going to create a new label here for the age. Okay, so right now here I have created another text field for the age, and mark that this age path inside the user registration DTO, the data type that I have taken is int. Okay, so if I go to my website and if I'm going to refresh this particular page, so now we can see the age field right here. We're getting the default value 0 here. That's because the data type we have taken as int. Okay, int default value is 0, so that's why we're getting 0 here. If you do not want any value right here, just change it to integer type. Okay, integer data type, integer wrapper class I'm talking about, right? So the object default type will be null, so you won't be get any default value right here if you are going to change it to integer. That's not a big deal right here, but the thing that I want to explain to you here is, okay, let me go here. For now, let me remove this Phon code from here, otherwise I'll get a bad request error. Let me remove that and let me do a refresh right now, so the Phon will go away. Let's say I'm giving 30 as age, and if I'm going to do register here, so I'll get 30 right here. Okay, as I have not displayed, let me go to the registration success page. Okay, so now if I'll go here and if I'll do a refresh, and now if I'm going to fill in the value of age as 30, and if I'll do a enter, now you can see age is 30. But the interesting thing which is happening in the behind, if you see here, right, when the data binding happens, if I'll go to the registration controller, whenever the data binding happens here, so what basically happening, the user is entering a string, okay, but the data which is getting binded inside the registration DTO, the age type is integer. So 30 is binding to the age property and is automatically getting converted to int type, right? So this is basically happening behind the scene by the Spring by using the default data binder. But what's wrong is happening with the Phon type. So if I go to the communication DTO, if you see here, the Phon type is a object itself. It's a class, it's a reference type, or it's a special type, right? So if I go to my user registration page, and if I create the text field for Phon, so now the problem that we are having here, if I do refresh this page, now this Phon, whatever the data that user is entering, let's say 918888, so let's say this is the phone number, whenever user is doing a register, now that's a string that user is entering, right? But the problem is the Spring internally is not able to bind the data with this particular field called Phon. That's because this Phon field is not a string type, is a object type. This is a special object. So the binding is not happening by the Spring framework itself, and Spring is saying, hey, this is a special format that you are receiving the Phon. You are giving country code 91, then dash, then 8888. This is the country code and this is the number. So how come I am going to assume that what is the country code, what is the number? Then you have to explicitly separate this thing, let's say 91 as country code, 8888 as a phone number, and you have to tell me that inside the communication DTO, inside the Phon class, I have to bind the country code with the value called 91. And I have to bind the user number with the value called 88. You have to explicitly define me that, and then only I am able to bind the data. I am not going to bind the data automatically because I do not know the data type that you are using and how you want to store the data. And for this kind of pattern, just like a phone number or a credit card number, we have to write some kind of special formatter. Okay, and inside that formatter we have to define that, hey, this is our format, right? So I'm going to extract the country code from this format, whatever user entered, and I'm going to extract the number from this, and this number I'm going to store it with the country code and with the user number, and this object is going to be stored in my database. So the user is going to enter the phone number as a string. So we have to receive the string, we have to convert that number to an object of phone, and we have to set these respective properties, and we have to store the object, the phone object, not the string object. We have to store the phone object into our DB or into our database. So we have to do some kind of formatting right now, and now let's understand how to do all these things and how to write a formatter which is going to help Spring for the data binding whenever we're dealing with some special kind of object just like phone or the credit card number, and how we're going to get the data binding done in this particular case. Let's go for it. Okay, so now is the break time. Okay, take a break, do not jump to the next section, and before you go ahead, make sure you have practiced, you have done, you have coded whatever I taught you for the last 30 minutes. That is going to help you. That is going to help you for sure, because you will have a setup in your mind, right? I am going to give you some assignments at the end of the video. So in order to do those assignments, you have to have a proper knowledge on the formatting concept, okay? Or you have to understand whatever I have said in this particular video. So pause this video right now and practice whatever I have said, and then you can resume this video. So take a break. So right now, let me give you a step-by-step walkthrough on the formatter concept of the Spring framework or the Spring MVC or the Spring Boot, whatever you can say. So let's learn the formatter concept. The way we can create a formatter in Spring framework by utilizing an interface called Formatter interface. To see that interface, you can hit Command Shift T and you can search for Formatter. Okay, so you can see there are multiple formatters available here, but the one we are interested for is the Formatter interface coming from org.springframework.format. Cool, so let me double click this. Okay, so now if you see this interface, so this interface doesn't have any method, but it extends to another two interfaces. One is printer interface and one is parser interface. So if you see the description of this particular interface, it says that a formatter is both a printer and a parser. Okay, so what do you mean by a printer and parser? So if you go for the parser interface, right now in our scenarios, we are going to use the parser interface and we are going to utilize this method, the parse method here, to convert the data. In our situation, we are going to use this parse interface right now to convert our phone number, which is a string type, to an object type called phone. Okay, so we are going to use the parse method here. The parse means conversion. Okay, so by using the parse method here, we can actually convert the data type of our object. So now let's use the parse method here to solve this particular problem. So let's capture this data and let's use the parse method here of the parser interface, and let's convert this string data to an object type. In our case, this is going to be the phone type. So let me type in phone. We are going to convert this particular object, which is a string object, to a phone object. Okay, so let's do that. But before that, let me come back to the parser interface. So how I came into the parser interface, let me go back. So right now, as I said you, the formatter interface extends to both parser interface, which is going to be used for the conversion of an object, and also it extends to the printer interface. So the printer interface does what? It is just display. This works in the other way of the parser, right? Don't get confused. I'm going to give you an example, then it will be pretty clear for you. So first of all, right now the thing is, if I'm going to implement the formatter interface, then I have to override the method which are there inside the printer interface. In our example right now, the printer interface has only one method called print, and also we have to override the methods which are there inside the parser interface, and inside the parser interface we have the parse method. So let me go back and let me close this formatter class, parser class, phone class, and the printer class. Now let me create a new package here. Okay, so let me do a right click, new. Let me directly create a class. Let's say right now the class name will be the phone number formatter, because I'm going to format this phone number. So let me say here phone number formatter. So we may have different types of formatter for our project. So let me keep all my formatter into a special package called com.seleniumexpress.formatter. Cool. So let me hit finish right now. So I'll get my phone number formatter class. So now to create a phone number formatter, as I said, first of all this class needs to implement an interface. Let's say implements. Now we can implement the formatter interface of the Spring framework, or we can implement the parser interface, or you can implement the printer interface, right? It's up to your choice, but I'm going to implement the formatter interface because this is going to give me both the parser and the printer methods. So now I can override both the parse and the print method right here. Okay, so now we're getting some error here. That's because we have not defined the type here. So the phone number formatter, by using this particular class, actually what we are trying to format. Obviously, if I have already told you, if I'll go to the phone number, I am actually trying to format the phone number that I'm getting right here, and I'm going to convert it to the phone type. So the type here, I'm going to define it as the phone. Command S and the error should go away. No. Okay, let me delete this methods once again, and let me again click this link here, add unimplemented methods, and right now we get our print method and the parse method. Now let me design my parse method here, and I am going to start by writing some comment here. And first of all, let me write a sysout here just to add a debug purpose line and just to make sure that my parse method is getting executed. So I'm going to say here inside the parse method of the phone number formatter. Okay, so now let me write the logic to convert this particular string into our phone object. So before I write my logic here, let me run this program once so that you guys can see our flow is coming to this parse method whenever we are submitting this particular phone. Why the flow will come to this particular method? That's because we are writing a formatter for our phone object. Okay. So now let me deploy this particular project into the server, and let me see my parse method is getting executed or not, right? So if my parse method will be get executed, this particular line will be there in my console, right? Otherwise, I can put a debug point here and I can start debugging my program, and I can see that my flow is coming to this parse method or not. But hold on, one more thing. To make this phone formatter work, right, we need to tell Spring MVC that, hey, we are using the formatter. And the way we are going to tell Spring MVC that we have written some kind of formatter and you have to execute our formatter class, the way we are going to inform Spring MVC by going to our configuration file. So where is our configuration file? So this is the configuration file that we have for our application. Let me open that file, and here actually we need to add the formatter. So the way that we're going to tell Spring MVC that, hey, we are using a formatter, that's by I can implement an interface here. So my love calculator appconfig class, I'm going to implement it with an interface called web-MVC configure. Okay, that's the interface. So right now, if I'll go into this web-MVC configure interface, you can see there are a lot of methods. These are the default method. because I'm using Java 8 and the interface can have a method with a body, so no problem with that. And this is a Java 8 feature, but this is the method that I'm looking for right now, default void add formatter. So it takes the formatter registry as arguments, and using this registry interface we are going to add a formatter. Just see how I'm going to do it. So let me close this interface, and here just make sure that you have implements the web MVC configure interface in your application config class. Now let me override the default method. So let me override the method here called add formatter. So let me hit command space, and it is saying here override the method coming from the web MVC configure, and I'll say hey, override this one. Okay, so now let me delete it, and let me say here I am going to add the formatter with this registry reference, right? So I'll say what registry and dot add formatter, and here I'm going to define my formatter. So what is the formatter I'm going to add to my Spring MVC application? So this is the formatter class that I have created, right? Phone number formatter. So I'll do what here? I'll just create the instance of phone number formatter, and that's it. You are done. So right now, whenever the Spring MVC is going to read your configuration file, it is going to find that you have defined some kind of formatter which is going to help you during the data binding. So when the Spring is going to do the data binding, and suppose it fails in some scenario just like this, whenever it is going to fail to bind the data for the phone type, at that time it is going to look for the phone number formatter, and it is going to go into this particular class, and it is going to use this particular parse method, and whatever the logic that we're going to write here, according to that logic it is going to convert this particular object into the phone type or whatever the type that we want to convert the object to. Okay, so before I write the logic here, I have already given a breakpoint here, and also what I'll do here, I'll go to my love calculator ask config class, and I'll give another sysout here just to see the flow when my debug line is getting appear in my console, and I'll say inside add formatters method. Okay, I'll do command S, and now we can start our application and can check how the flow is going through. And before that, I'll go to my registration controller also. So star registration controller. So let me open my registration controller class, and also here I am going to give two debug purpose line just to see when my show registration page method is getting called and when my process user registration method is getting called. And also I'm going to remove this default data that I have set previously, right? Previously I have set this defaults data right here, right? So I don't need it right now. So let me remove it, and here I'm just going to define a sysout, and I'll say inside show registration page method. Okay, and also let me copy this and let me paste it here. So this method will be execute whenever the data will be processed. So let me do command V, and let me say inside the process registration method, and also I can give a breakpoint here, and I also give a breakpoint here just to see the flow, that when this particular method is getting executed, when this particular method is getting executed, and also whenever the parse method is getting executed. Okay, so now let me do one work. I'll make sure to start my server in debug mode. So I'll go here and I'll stop my server, and I'll start my server in debug mode, right? So I can hit this button here. So let me start my server. Cool. So right now you can already see something in the console, right? So if you see the console right now, whenever the dispatcher servlet is getting initialized, you can see that I'm already getting this inside add formatters method. So this is making sure that whenever my dispatcher servlet is getting initialized, it is reading my configuration file, and in my configuration file I have already defined this particular formatter called phone number formatter. So this is getting registered with my dispatcher servlet, and this particular line here confirms that this particular method has been executed, and that's why we're getting this particular line in our console. So now let me go to my application and let me refresh this particular page. Cool. So something happened. So right now I have started my server in debug perspective. So I'll do yes, where the flow is going right now. So the flow came into the show registration page. Because it is trying to reload this particular page, it is going to show my registration page again because I have clicked the reload option here. So you can see the page is still loading. So that's why it is trying to show this particular user registration page, because we have fired the /register URL. Cool. So right now let me resume my app and let me reload my particular page. So my page got appeared here. You can see there is no loading sign. The page is already loaded. Now let's say if I'm going to enter my phone number as 91888888 and I'll do register. Let's see where the flow is going, and you can see that where is your flow right now. So your program flow right now here inside the parse method. So before the data binding happens, so before the registration controller, this particular methods get invoked. Before the data binding happens here, user registration DTO, these things, before the objects get created and before the data binding happens, you can see that my flow is right now inside the phone number formatter class, and my parse method is getting executed. So I have given a breakpoint here in the line number 21 inside the parse method. So here my program flow stops. But that's a good sign. Before the data binding happens here, before this particular method executes, my flow goes to my parse method. That confirms that if I write my logic here, my program will work fine. But right now I have not written any logic. So let me do a resume, okay, so that it will go to the next breakpoint. So let me do F6. And you can see now my program got terminated and I got some error right here. The user registration field has some rejected value for the phone number. And even though I have a breakpoint here inside my registration controller process user registration method, this particular method didn't happen. The data binding also didn't happen right here. That's because the default data binder fails to bind our phone data with the respective type, and we also got a bad request 400 error in our web page. Okay, so let me go here again and let me observe the console here. So you can see the program flow so far. First of all, inside the show registration method gets called, which is this particular method. This method belongs to the registration controller class, and whenever we fire the /register method, this particular output we got in our console because this particular page got loaded, right? And the next thing is whenever I click register, so it goes to the parse method. It went to this method and this particular line printed in the console, right? Then the parse method executed, but as we have not written any kind of logic here inside our parse method, our data binding didn't happen and we got a 404 bad request. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's fix this bad request error. So first of all, let me minimize this particular thing and let me clear my console so that there will be nothing right here, and we can freshly design our parse method right here and we can write our logic right now. So before I write my logic here, what I'm going to do here, again I'll go to my previous page and I'll hit the register button, and the moment I'm going to hit the register button, my program flow will go to the parse method, and see my program flow directly came to my parse method, and I already got a breakpoint here, so the program stops here. So the thing that I want to show you, if I put my cursor here, you can see the parse method does have two arguments. One is text and one is local. So basically for the conversion of the object, we will be needing this text object, which is basically the string object. So if I put my cursor here, you can see the text is actually the number that the user is entering. So now the user has entered 91-8888 whatever, and that number I'm getting here. Now let me do one work. From this string, from this particular string, let me separate this 91 and let me put it inside the respective property of my Phon class, and let me separate this 8888 and let me put this particular value inside the respective property of my Phon class, right? Now you might be asking me that what is this local here? So this local is basically used for the localization or the internationalization, and we will be learning the local stuff at that particular time whenever we are going to learn the internationalization stuff. But for now we can understand like this local is going to give you the feature to do the translation. Let's say if you want to show the text to the user in Chinese language or in French language, then you can use this local object to convert our language, currency, whatever into a specific geographical location. So this local is basically coming from java.util, you can see, and you can actually practice this local class, and you can actually do some research on the local class in your free time. But right now we don't care about it. I only want to populate my text in English language. My concern is here to convert this particular string. So now let me do one thing. Okay, first of all, let me resume my program, and I'll be getting the error. No problem, let me write the logic for that right now. So for now, my first job is going to split this particular string that I'm getting from my user. So split the string received from the user. Okay, so let me change this text to complete phone number. Okay, so that it is going to be more readable. So the next step is, once I'm going to split this particular phone number, so I'll write extract the country code and set it to the Phon class country code property. Okay, so first of all, let me split the string here. So this is the string that I'll be getting from the user. So I'll do complete phone number dot split, and I'm going to split my string by using a hyphen, because that's how the user is entering the data. Cool. So once the splitting has been done, I'll do a command 1 here, and I'll say assign the statement to a new local variable. So the split method is basically returns a string array, and let me say it the phone number array. Okay, so before I write the logic here, let me examine this particular array, that how I'm getting my values splitted and stored inside this particular array. So I have already started my server in debugging mode. So what I'll do here, I'll go to this particular page and I'll again hit register. Okay, so now my flow is again inside the parse methods. So first of all, let me hit the step over. Okay, now my flow comes here. Obviously this particular line is already there in my console. Okay, so now again I'll do what? Again I'll do F6 here, or I can do step over. And now if I put my cursor here, now see, I already get a string array here. You can see I already get a string array which says 2 indexes, 0 and 1. In the 0 indexes I got 91, which is my country code, and in 1 indexes I got my phone number. So this is the string array. We have 2 different objects which got stored inside the string array. So right now our job is, we are going to extract the country code from the 0th index, and we are going to extract the phone number from the 1st index. And once we extract that, we are going to set this particular string in our phone object. So now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to resume my program by hitting F8. Okay, first of all, I'm going to create my phone object. Okay, and once my phone object gets created, I'm going to set the country code to my phone number. So what is the country code? Obviously the country code is there inside this array. Command C, I'll put command V here, and as you have seen previously, the country code is there inside the 0th index, right? And similarly I'll do what? I'll again do phone.set user number and where is my user number is getting stored? Again inside this particular array, and I'll paste the array reference here, and my user number is inside the first index. So let me do command S. So very simple logic so far, right? So first of all, we are getting the user input, which is a string, and after that we are creating our Phon object, and once the splitting is done here, we are getting the data from this particular array one by one, and we are setting it to our Phon object reference. So in simple word, we have converted this string object to a Phon object, and at last I am going to return this Phon object right here. So I have returned this Phon object right here. Okay, so now let's see our stuff is working or not. So let me again start my server in debug mode, and let's see what is the flow, and are we getting our expected output right now, and are we able to solve the bad request error. Okay, my server is started now in debugging mode. Let me go to my console tab here, and right now I'll go again to my web browser and I'll do register, and let's see how the flow is going right now. Let me switch. Okay, so again I came to the parse method, so let me do F6 or step over. Now the splitting will happen. Now you can see I already got my data in my array, which is called phone number array, and right now I'm creating my phone class object because this is the class which is going to store my phone number. Now let me do F6 again, and now actually I'm trying to set the country code by extracting the country code from the phone number array, which is this one, and I'm getting the 0th index from this particular array. So if you want to see the value, I can hit Command Shift I or Control Shift I, and you can see the phone number array 0th index value is 91, right? So that will be get set to my phone object right now, and again let me do F6. So if I put my cursor here, you can see in my phone object I already got country code set here, which is 91. Now the user number we need to set. So let me execute this particular line. Again let me do F6. So you can see right now, if I put my cursor here, I got my user number set to my phone object as well, which is 8888, whatever the user entered. Cool. So right now I have created my phone object, I set my value. Now let me return my phone object here. So let me do step over or F6 again, and now let me resume this particular program, and now see my program flow comes into the registration success URL because my formatter works good. That's why the Spring MVC is able to convert my string data to the phone data, and right now the data binding happens fine. So if you put the cursor inside this user registration DTO right now, let me put my cursor here, now you'll be seeing that I will not have any problem to bind the phone data with the communication DTO. So inside the communication DTO, if I'll open this, you can see I have an object phone associated with this field called phone. And if I'll open this, you can see with this phone, I have already got my data set to this particular property. Okay, so the data binding happens good. Obviously, the email is empty. That's because we haven't provided the email value right here. That's why the DTO's email property is empty. Cool. So right now, if I'll do F6, okay, so now you can see my inside process registration method get called, and if I'll resume my program or if I'll press F8 right now, you can see the data are there in the next page. Cool. So I got my phone number right here, but why I didn't get the dash right here? That's because if I'll go to my phone class right now, if I'll go to the toString method, see I have missed the dash here. So I'll give a dash, I'll hit Command S, okay, and now let me test this again. So basically let me go to the first page right now, and here only first of all let me do a refresh. I do not want the debug mode right now, so I want to disable all these breakpoints. So I will hit this button here that will skip all the breakpoints, and I'll resume my program. So now you can see inside the show registration method line is there inside the console, and I got this particular page. And right now let me say 91-2233445566, and let me hit register, and you can see this is there, right? 91 dash and whatever the number that the user has entered. And if you see the console here, let me go to the other perceptives, and if I'll open the console here, now you can see the console the program flow. First, the formatter method get called, which is there inside our configuration file, and then the show registration page method called, and then the parse method of the phone number formatter method got called, and then the process user registration method, which is this method, which is actually showing this particular page. That method got called, and these lines are proving it. Okay, so I believe that you have completed understanding the formatter parse method. It's pretty useful, isn't it? I believe that you guys are enjoying it, and you guys already get started with the debugging stuff. So in the next video, we are going to bring in some advanced debugging concept, right? But before that, follow along with me. Try to debug whatever I have debugged so far. Follow along with me. Do it by your own. And obviously, I'm going to teach you a lot of advanced stuff in the coming tutorial. But this is the best right now. You can create your own parse method. You can also do debugging to understand the flow. See whatever I have explained. If you are getting all these things in your local as well, if you can replicate all these things, okay? Just have a look on that. So take a break, do practice, and once you are done with the coding, then who is stopping you to learn the print method? So pause the video, and once you resume it, we are going to understand about the print method. Okay guys, so I'll show you the Jet Plus security that I have for my camera. See, this tripod is broken, okay? This is a broken tripod. If I'll remove this bottle from here, this is going to fall down and my camera will go. So this tripod is actually not for this camera. I lost my tripod. See my Jet Plus security here. If my camera is going to fall down, this is going to fall on this pillow or this is going to fall on this comforter. And this is lockdown, man. I cannot go outside and cannot buy a tripod, okay? So please do adjust with me for now, okay? And if it is going to fall down, I am going to make all my courses paid, and I'm going to recover the camera amount from you guys. You guys need to buy me a camera, okay? Now demand me to shoot a new video. Take care. Okay, so now you understood how to create a formatter just like a phone number formatter, and obviously I'm going to give you an assignment by the end of this tutorial. But before that, if you see here, if we are implementing the formatter interface, we will have both the parse method and the print method. Now you know that in which scenario you are going to use the parse method. The parse method is actually going to help you to convert one data type into another. Okay, but what about the print method? So let's understand about that scenario, okay? In which scenario you're going to use this particular method. For an example, now think that the user is basically submitted the form and this is the final output. Let's imagine that he has filled in everything and he hits the submit button. He did fill in everything right here, so we get all his data. Then the formatting stuff happened, the conversion happened, and if you go to the registration controller, the flow will obviously come to this particular page, and here actually the data binding is going to be happen. And just imagine that here we are going to save the registration DTO object, whatever the data that the user has filled in, we're going to save the DTO object into our database, right? Imagine that I'm not going to write the code for this right now. For the database code, we're going to learn the Spring JDBC soon, but right now just imagine that I have written some kind of database code right here, and I'm going to save this DTO object in our database. Cool. So now imagine that now if you are trying to give a feature to the user that he can actually edit his form, okay? So if this user has already registered with us and if he is coming to our registration page, we are going to pre-populate all the data that he has saved earlier. So what we need to do, we are going to load all the data that this particular user already has entered in the previous time. So previously the user has filled in all the data and he did register with us. So whenever we are going to show this particular form
to our user, here actually whenever the class register request will executed, at that time what we need to do, we need to load the saved user data from the database. Got it? So now let's just imagine that, okay, I have written some kind of code here which is going to fetch the saved data of the user, and whenever the user registration page will be shown, whenever this particular page will be shown, all the data we are going to retrieve from our database and we're going to pre-populate it right here. So now just understand the situation, right? Previously, whenever the user has entered the phone number, he has given us a string, right? And then we have used the phone number formatter and we have converted the string to the phone object, and we have saved the phone object, okay, to our database. And now if you're going to see the registration controller here, whenever this particular page will be loaded, what we're going to do, we're going to fetch all the data saved by the user previously. The phone object will also be retrieved from the database, right? So for an example, right now I am not doing any database operation, so let me manually set a phone number, and let's assume that that phone number has been retrieved from our database. So what I'm going to do here, that I'm going to create a phone object. Let's say phone equal to new phone, okay, and imagine that this particular phone has a country code. Let me set the country code manually here, 91, and let me set the phone number manually here. Let's say something, let's say the user has entered 223344 whatever, okay, let me say 2233445566. okay, this is the number that the user has entered previously. And now let me add this phone object to this DTO object. Okay, so what I'll do here, DTO, which refers to my user registration DTO, and inside the user registration DTO I have the communication DTO, and inside the communication DTO I have the phone. Okay, so what I can do here, I can come to the registration controller and I'll say DTO.get communication DTO, and I want to set the phone number manually here. I'm going to provide this phone object right here, whatever I have created. Obviously the phone inside the DTO was null previously, so I have manually created a phone object, and I have set that particular phone object to the communication DTOs, okay, to this particular DTO phone property. Okay, so this particular phone I'm setting it manually right now. Now you can imagine that this particular thing happened through a database operation, and we paste this particular thing from the database, and after that we have set it to our DTO object. Okay, so now let's test it, so whether we'll be getting this particular number whenever our page loads right here or not. So let me delete this particular number and let me refresh this particular page, and let's see what is going to happen. Okay, I have stopped my server, so let me start my server. I can start it in debug mode. Okay, so we will not waste time. So in the first shot only we are going to see everything in debug mode. So let's see how the flow is going and whether I am able to see this particular thing in my phone number text box whenever the page loads. So now what I'm going to do here, you can see all my breakpoints are disabled. So let me enable these breakpoints here, and now let me go to my server and let me fire this register URL. Okay, so first of all let me switch the perceptives, and you can see the flow came to my /register method. Now let me do step over, and obviously in this particular stage, if you are going to check my DTO object, obviously there will not be any value for my communication DTO. You can see this is null. But imagine that some kind of database operation happens and we have fetched the number from the database and the phone object got created, the country code we have set. So let me do F6, and here I'm going to set my phone number to my communication DTO, right? But I'm going to get a null pointer exception because I did some silly mistake. So as you can see, the user registration DTO, which is actually our DTO object, here the communication DTO has no value and it is a null value. So this particular phrase, it is going to give us null, and over null, if you are going to perform any operation, obviously you will get a null pointer exception. Okay, so if I'll do command 6, I'll get a exception. So you can see I have already came to the invocation target exception, and I already came to exception. So if I'll do F8 and or if I'll do resume this particular program, I'll be getting some exception. That's because I have not set the communication DTO object. So I'll be getting a null pointer exception. So you can see in the exception log that I am getting a null pointer exception as the root cause. Okay, so let me get rid of this particular error. So let me go to the Spring Perceptives and I'll go to the controller, and before I set my phone number, what I'll do, I will create a communication DTO object, communication DTO equal to new communication DTO, and inside the communication DTO I have the phone number. So I'll do set phone, and I'm going to set this particular phone object right here. And after that, what I'm going to do here, finally I'm going to set my communication DTO object to my registration DTO object. So this DTO, okay, which is my user registration DTO, has the set communication DTO. Here actually I'm going to copy and paste my communication DTO object. Okay, so now my communication DTO object has the phone number. Now I can expect that this particular line should execute and I should not get a null pointer exception. So let my code gets deployed into my server, and now let me go to the debug perceptives again, and now let me go here and I will hit my URL here. Cool. So right now I come again to the /register URL handler mapping, and I'll do F6. So my phone object got created, my communication DTO object get created, my phone got set to my communication DTO, and now if I'll do F6 here, you can see there is no error and we got rid of this particular null pointer exception error. So if I'll put my cursor here in my DTO, which is my user registration DTO object, so you can see the user registration DTO object is getting created here, right? We do not need to manually create our user registration DTO object. Spring will do user registration DTO equal to new user registration DTO. So the user registration DTO object get created by Spring, and then I have manually created the communication DTO object right here. Okay, and after that, if I will expand, let me expand this, and after that if I'll expand the communication DTO, you can see I got my phone number set here. So this particular phone number I have manually set it just right here, and I have added that particular phone number to the communication DTO, and then the communication DTO I have added it to my user registration DTO. So my values are set. Okay, my default values are set with this DTO object. Cool. So now if I'll do F6 again, so now my flow is in the line number 33, and if I will execute this particular line, I should be able to see my user registration page, and I should be able to see this particular phone number in my phone number text box as a default value. So let me resume this particular program and let's see if I'll be able to see my registration page. So let me resume this and let me go over here. And see here, we got a registration page, but there is no phone number came as a default value. So now again, the data binding didn't happen. That's because we cannot see the phone number just right here. So the reason why the data binding didn't happen is, if you see our controller, in a controller, we are creating a phone object. This is an object, right? But here in the page, we need to convert that particular object to a string, and to do that and to display that particular object as a string, we need the print method. So for that, what I can do here, I can go to my phone number formatter class, and let me do something here. Let me check something here. Let me do a sysout, and let me say that inside the print method of the phone number formatter class, right? Let me check when this particular method is getting executed, and let me give a breakpoint here, and let me again hit that particular URL. Okay, the flow came here. Let me say no this time. So I'm inside the slash register handler method. Let me do step over, and this gets printed inside show registration method, which is this debug line. Now let me put a debug line right here, and let me do resume, so it will come to the next debug line. Okay, let me switch to the debug perceptives, and now here we're setting the phone, so let me do F6. Okay, now the communication DTO is set, and now we are going to show the user this particular page. Now again, let me do a F6, and okay, so the source is not found. Let me do resume here, and look at this, where my flow came. So now before Spring is going to show this particular page, as it is not going to convert this particular object to a string object, and the default data binding didn't work, the Spring actually looked for the formatter, and as we have add the phone number formatter, it came into the print method. So right now if I'll do F6, you can see this particular line gets executed, and if you see our console right now, you can see inside the print method of the phone number formatter. So right now here inside the print method, we need to write some logic to convert the phone object to the string object so that we can view it to the user right here. So if I do F6 again and or resume again, you can see the page got completely loaded, and right now the phone number didn't appear here. So now what I can do here, I just can come here to the print method, and right here I'll get my phone object right here. Okay, so whatever the object that I'm setting right here in my registration controller, this particular phone object, this particular object, I'll be getting just right here. And once I get that object, what I can do here, let me say phone. Okay, and what I can do here, I can say phone dot get country code plus, and I will give a hyphen here, and I'll do plus phone dot get user number, and I'm going to concatenate these two strings, and I'm going to return it, right? Let me remove this white spaces, and let me return this particular thing. Okay, so now if I'm going to deploy it again in my server, now I'm expecting that my flow will again come to the print method, so this particular thing will be executed, and I will be getting the fully formatted phone number loaded to this particular phone number text box. Cool, so let me go here again and let me do a refresh. Let me switch, and now let me do F6, F6, F6. Let me do step over, step over, step over, step over, and now this particular page will try to load. Data binding fails, and it will go to the phone number formatter. Let me do step over. Okay, so for this it went to some particular class. I'm not interested about it, so I'll just resume my program so that it will go to the next breakpoint. Okay, so the next breakpoint is here inside the phone number formatter. So let me do F6. So now this particular line gets printed in the console, whatever I have written here. So if you can see here, the phone number that we are getting has a country code 91 and the user number, whatever we have set it in our controller. So the get country code and the get username will be executed. This will be concatenated, and this particular string will be returned to the view. So let me do again F6. Now actually I can resume my program. Okay, now let's see here, and boom, we got our print method executed, and it helped us to display whatever the default value that we have in our phone object, and we have actually converted the phone object to a string object. Okay, and that's how the things work. So if I will actually give a different number right now to 2, let's say 3344556, let me do register, and boom, so I get my phone number right here. So it works in either way right now. It is able to bind the data while it is getting loaded, and whenever we're doing register, it is actually able to convert the data from a string to a object type, and it helped us to get the data binding done. Okay, so this is why we're going to use the print method, and this is why we're going to use the parse method. Okay.
Okay, so far the code that I have written is a little buggy. So this is going to break in most of the scenario. Okay, so let's fix some bug. The code that I have written is not 100% correct. The logic that I have written inside the parse method is not 100% correct. So you are going to help me to improve the logic. Okay, so here is a scenario that I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you how to fix that. Then I'm going to give you a different scenario and you have to fix the bug for that. Okay, try to utilize your brain power right now, and let's develop some small logic, and gradually we will be better on that. Okay, so I'm going to fix a bug right now and I'm going to give you another requirement, so you are going to solve that one. Okay, but it's my turn right now, so let's fix some bug and let's improve our logic inside the parse method.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's break this system. Okay, so whatever the code that we have written inside the parse method of our formatter class, let's break it. Okay, because this code is not that stable. So let me show you an example. So if I'll go to my browser right now, let me go back, and here let's say the user is not providing the country code. Okay, so if he is not providing the country code and directly trying to register, then again we are getting a bad request. Okay, so see here, if I'll go back, if I'll provide my country code and if I'll to register, the binding is happening fine. But by mistake, if the user is not providing the country code, again our program breaks. And why it is breaking, probably you guys have already guessed the thing. Okay, so right now if you see the console here, again you are getting a rejected value for the phone number. Okay, and again it's saying type mismatch. Okay, so where it is actually failing. So to test this out, let me give a breakpoint here inside the parse method again of the phone number formatter class, and let me make sure that my server has started with the debugging mode. That's pretty fine. So now let me stop my program right here inside this particular method in the line number 23, and let's check it out where actually my program breaks. And obviously something would have wrong here, right? I know where it is wrong, but I just want to show because I never tried debugging in front of you, so you guys will be familiar how to find bugs and how to fix it. So it's a good time. Okay, so now let me go ahead and let me go to the previous page and let me do register here. Cool, so let me switch. So my program flow came to the parse method, and let me do a F6 or a step over right now. Okay, so right now the splitting happened, but here if you see, once the splitting happened, we have only one index. Okay, we have only the 0th index, and the 0th index has the complete phone number. So in the line number 30, we are creating the phone object, and if I'll do a step over again, if you see here, we are setting the country code by fetching it from the phone number array of the 0th index. And if you know already, the 0th index got this value. It's not the country code, is the phone number. So right now my logic fails here, isn't it? So if you are going to execute this particular line, you can do Command Shift I to see the value. Okay, something wrong is there. So what I can do here, I can do right click and I can click on, okay, inspect is working. Okay, inspect is not working for me, but you can try inspecting. Do a Control Shift I so that you can see the value, whatever the value this particular phone number is returning. So the problem will start from the line number 31, right? Because here I'm setting the country code and I'm getting the country code wrong right now if the user is not given the phone number in a valid format, because right now we're getting the actual number, not the country code, as the first index. Now here my first of all my business logic fails here, right? But not the code. So if I do F6 right now, this line will execute fine. That's because, okay, we already have something right here in the 0th index. But wait, now whenever we are actually trying to fetch the user number from the first index, right now this array doesn't have a first index. So if I'll do F6 right now, I should be going to the exception. That's my expectation. Cool. So as you can see right now, we came to formatting conversion, this particular class written by Spring Framework. We don't care about it, but we came to the catch block, and here they are actually throwing a illegal argument exception. So if I'll do F6 again, I'll go into this exception, F6 again. Now again, they'll keep throwing this they will keep throwing this exception. So if I'll resume my program, at the end I'll be getting that particular exception right here in my console. As you can see, it has a rejected value. So what I can do, I can close this and let me switch to this, okay, and let me do a work right now. Before I split the things, okay, I need to make sure the user has provided the country code, okay, and if the user is not providing the country code, let me add some kind of default country code. Let's say the user is not given the country code here, so the default country code will be 91 automatically, okay. The 91 will be automatically included before the phone number if the user is not providing the country code. So how to do that? So let me do one thing. Let me go to my code, and here before I perform all these things, I'll check for one thing. So first of all, here I'll check whether the number consists of dash. So if the number consists of a dash, I can be sure that, okay, this is a valid format the user is entering, okay, so there is no problem, so I can execute this particular code safely. But if the dash is not there, if the hyphen is not found, then add 91 as the default country code. Okay, so what we can do right now, first of all, how I'm going to check whether the number does contain a dash or not. So to do that, what I can do, I can take this particular string, Command C, and I can search for the index of the character dash or hyphen. Okay, so right now you know that what is the return type of this index of method. The index of method returns an int. So if the string contains a dash character, then the index of method is going to tell us the index, the exact index where this particular hyphen exists, right? But what if the dash or the character is not present inside this particular number, then the index of method is going to return me a -1. So if I'm going to see the description of this, you can see it returns a -1 if the character does not occur. Let me do command 1 right here and assign it to a local variable. Let me tell it as index, okay. And now what I'll do, I'll have a check here. If, and I'll write here, if the index equal to -1, okay, then here I have to do what? I have to perform this thing, right? Let me do command X, command V here. So if our program is going to come into this if block, then we will be sure that the dash is not found in the user input, and we are going to add 91 as a default country code to our phone number. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I am going to keep all this thing inside a else block. Let's say else here, and let me do close it right here. Okay, so now we got another error here. That's because the compiler doesn't have the access to this phone. That's because we have defined this particular phone inside the else block. So what I'm going to do here right now, I can take this object, I'll do command X, and I can put it outside of the if else block, right? So what I can do here, I will paste it just right here. Okay, cool. So right now there is no error here. So if the index is -1, what I will do here, let me copy this thing, command C, and let me do command V here, and let me say set country code is 91, because that's the default country code that I'm going to set if the user doesn't have this dash in his code. And for the user number, I can change it to phone number array of 0, but I'm getting an error because it doesn't have access to this particular phone number because I'm keeping it inside the else block. So let me do one thing, let me do command X, okay, and let me paste the splitting stuff right here outside of the if and else block, and now the things will work fine. Okay, so now let me do format this particular code because it is looking really bad right now. That's nice, right? So here is the complete parse method. You can right now have a look. Obviously we're going to make some more changes to it, but this is what we have it right now. Cool. So now let's go ahead and test this application. So now let me assume that if the user is not giving the country code and hitting the register, now let's see how my code is behaving. So now let me switch to the debug perceptives again. My flow came to the parse method. Let me do F6. Now I can keep hitting F6 in my keyboard, right? You know that I'm hitting this step over button. So let me do F6. So my program flow came to the line number 25. The foreign object got created. Now then the splitting happened, and you can see right now, as the user has not provided the country code, we have only one index right here. Now let's go to the line number 30. Here we are checking for the index of slash. So if I'll go to F6 again, and here you can see once this particular line got executed, I got the index as -1. That's because we do not have this particular character in our phone number string. Okay, so now the code will go to the if block, and the country code will be set, the user number will be set, and if you see the phone object right now, you can see we have 91. That is because we have set it manually, because the user has not entered it, and whatever the number that the user entered, we got it right here. Now if we'll do F6 again, the else block will be skipped because the if executed and the phone number will be returned. So now let me resume this program by clicking F8, and you can see right now there is no error, and as the user has not entered the country code, he got it by default. Okay, so let me go back, let me check with the country code, let me give 92 here, and let me do register, let me disable my breakpoint, let me do resume, and you can see he got 92, right? The problem will come whenever he will not have it. Whenever he will not have it, we are going to add it manually. Okay, so here is the result.
So I believe that you guys are practicing with me, and I believe that you are 100% clear whatever I'm doing, and you're trying to replicate all these things in your local. So it's time to give you some assignments. So I am going to give you two different assignments right now. Okay, I am going to give you a bug, a defect to fix, and then I'm going to give you a story, a user story to develop from scratch. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a bug right now to fix. Let's fix a defect, and here is the requirement.
Okay, so this is going to be the assignment number 1. Okay, and in this assignment we are going to fix another defect, and whatever the bug fixes we have done so far, that is pretty good, but there will be one more scenario when we'll have a problem. So see right here. Okay, right now we have just done a bug fixes. If there will be a number, let's say there will be a number, and if somebody is doing register without giving a country code, this will work fine. This is going to add a 91 for us. Cool, but let me go back, and here right now let me give something like this dash, and then I'll give my number. Okay, let's say if the user is entering just like this, right now let's see what is going to happen, and right now let's see whether the 91 is going to be preceded before our number. Okay, let me do register, and you can see I got the number just like this. There is no 91 preceded before this number. So you have to fix this bug. You have to fix this defect. So the requirement is, if the user is trying to trick our application, and if he is not giving a country code, and if his number started with a dash, in this scenario also we have to add a 91 right here whenever he is submitting his form, right? His number should be 91, that should be by default, and then he should get this number. Okay, so you have to fix the code. Okay, you have to pick something inside the parse method. So what you can do is, you can put a breakpoint here in the line number 23, go ahead and try debugging. Okay, but you have to do code changes here inside the parse method. And let me tell you that I am not going to tell you the solution right now, how you are going to fix this bug. Okay, if the user is not entering the country code, okay, I should get the country code in the next page right here. Cool, so right now you can pause this video and you can look for a solution and try debugging. Just see what is wrong here inside the parse method and how you're going to fix it. Now let me give you the solution. I am going to fix this code right now, but pause this video, do not see the solution, try it by yourself, and in case if you're not able to do it, see the solution, see the sample code, but I'm damn sure you will be able to solve this thing. So this is the challenge for you, solve the defect.
Okay, so now this is gonna be the solution for the scenario that I have given to you. Okay, I have tried to make this code as simple as I can, and also I have written some comment for your understanding, but I am not going to explain to you this code. So see this code, understand this, and you just make your changes in case you were not able to do it by yourself. So the only thing that I did right here, I did include this thing, this phrase in my if check. Okay, so I just used the string class start with method in couple of places just to check whether our number is getting started with a hyphen. Okay, and if so, then I have just written my logic right here. Okay, so I think you can understand this. It's pretty straightforward. Come on, give it a try and go ahead and make the changes and make it work by seeing the solution, but do not try to copy it. Debug the thing, understand it, and in case if you can make it more better, and in case if you can make it more stable, then you are welcome. Go ahead and make changes and make this code better. Cool, so make sure you understand the requirement, and right now you are going to fix the bug, and once you fix it, I'm going to give you some requirements and you are going to develop the requirement from the scratch. So this is going to be the assignment 2, and this is not a defect, this is a story. Okay, so listen to the user story and do the development for the same. Okay, right now it's your turn to practice an assignment. So you have to basically design this particular screen. So as you can see, this is a bill screen. It will have a card number, a credit card number, and you will accept the credit card number in this format. Okay, and also there will be a amount text box. So if you see the credit card number, you will get the credit card number in this format. So the user has to enter the credit card number with a dash, and this should be 16 digits. And in the amount, he need to define 10 euro or 10 USD or 10 pound, whatever, with a space here. Once you fill in all the detail, and if you click pay bill, it should go to the next page, and here we'll be getting a message called bill against the credit card number this, whatever the user entered, for an amount this has been generated. But if you see here, this 10 euro, this is not the string euro, this is the euro symbol, right? So if you see, the amount the user has entered here is in string, but we're converting this euro string to this. Okay, so here is another example. So the user will enter the credit card number and the amount, let's say he has entered 10 USD, and he click on pay bill. So this is the format that he will be seeing the message in the next form or in the submission form. Okay, so this is the screen number 2. Cool, so you have to write two different formatter here. The first formatter will be the credit card formatter, and the next formatter will be the currency formatter. And also I have written locale here. And why I've written locale here? Because we are going to use the locale class to do the internationalization or to convert the currency type into this particular form while displaying the message. Okay, so I'll give you another example, but here is the thing. We'll write a credit card class and we'll write an amount class. If you see, the credit card class has first 4 digits, second 4 digits, third 4 digit, and the last 4 digit. So this is how my datas are going to be binded. And for the amount, we'll have the bill amount, whatever the amount that user is going to enter, and the next one will be the locale definition. So if he is entering USD, we need to bind the USD with this locale definition. Or if he is entering the pound, then we need to bind the pound in string format with this field. Okay, so this will be our main class called class bill, and this bill will have two dependencies called credit card and the amount, which is going to be this and this. So this is gonna be your class hierarchy, or this is gonna be your project architecture, the new project that you are going to build for the assignment. Cool, so right now here is the currency formatter that you are going to write. I know the credit card formatter is pretty simple, and you have already seen the example during the time I have developed the Phon formatter. But here the currency formatter, the way you are going to write it, you'll have the print class and you'll have the parse class, and you are going to use this locale class right here to display or to convert the USD to the symbol dollar, right? Or to format the 10 euro to this 10 euro, you will be needing the locale class, and using the locale class you can format this USD euro to this particular type, and that is the thing that you are going to research by yourself. Okay, so for now you'll be write a formatter for the credit card, you'll be write a formatter for the amount. This will be pretty straightforward, and for this you need to research a little how to use the local class. If you need help, you can ask me in Selenium Express support Facebook group, or you can paste your code right there if you're facing an issue, and we'll be solving there. But you go ahead and do some research on the local class. And this is the assignment you have to develop, and send this assignment to seleniumexpress@gmail.com, and I'll be checking your assignment right there. And if you have successfully retained the formatter for the credit card and the amount, then please paste your code screenshot in the Selenium Express Facebook support group, so that other people will be also get benefited by seeing your code, and they will have some ideas. But before seeing anybody's code, I will definitely appreciate you to try this exercise by yourself, which is going to give you a good hands-on on this concept. Now let's go ahead. Okay, so I believe all is well with you, and right now, before we wrap up this section, let's wrap it off with a twist. Okay, there is one thing you still didn't experience it, and right now let's see a scenario, and this is gonna blow your mind. And remember, I have a FAQ included with this section, so don't forget to comment the FAQ. Don't forget to answer my question in the comment section. So let's go for it right now. Okay, so before we move to the next section, I want to show you one last thing, and I want to give you a puzzle right now. Okay, just look at here. Let me go to my registration URL. If I do enter, I'll be getting my registration page, and as you can see, there are some log in the first line coming from the handler method, which is handling the /register URL pattern. And the second line here confirms that my print method of my phone number formatter gets called. That's because there are some default value attached to my phone number, and it has to be displayed in the right format. Okay, that's cool. So right now, whenever we'll be doing register, there will be two more methods will be get called right here. As you can see, the parse method of the phone number formatter get called, and this log is coming from my user registration controller handler method, which is handling this /registration success URL. Cool. So here is a question for you. If I'll go back, and if I do not provide any phone number right here, obviously right now the value is null for this particular phone number field, and if I'm going to do register, then what is going to happen? Will my code break? So the reason why I'm asking you this, as you can see in the log, the process user registration method, the handler method, if I'll do command shift R * controller, I'll go to the registration controller. As you can see, this method, right, inside process user registration method, right, this particular log confirms that before my flow comes to this particular method, the flow is going to the phone number. Let me do /formatter, the phone formatter.java. Let me open this. The flow is going to the parse method of the phone number formatter class. So here is the question. So if I am not entering any value right here, let's say the user is not entering any value right here and he is clicking register, then obviously the flow will go to the phone number formatter parse method, and here you can see this complete phone number will be null. And if this will be null, here in the line number 27, I'm doing some silly kind of thing, right? I'm using complete phone number dot split, and this value will be null, right? And over null, if I'm doing any kind of operation, I should be getting a null pointer exception. I have not given any null check for this particular line, which is bad. So my code should break in the line number 27, and I should be getting a null pointer exception because of the null value of the complete phone number. So let's see whether this is happening. Let me clear my console here, and right now let me go to the browser, and I'll not be giving any value right here, and I'll be hitting register. And what happened? So there is two things. My code didn't break, okay, and you can see something right here inside process user registration method.
This is kind of surprising, isn't it? Why the log which is there inside the parse method of my phone number formatter, which is this inside the parse method of the phone number formatter, this log I cannot see here in my console. Now, which confirms that this particular method didn't get executed. So if I'll go back, let me go back to this and let me go back again and let me clear the console and let me hit something 92 and just let me give a random phone number right here and let me do register. And see here, I got my phone number right here, which is completely formatted, and also the log confirms that first my parse method gets executed and then the handler method gets executed, correct? But hold on, if I'm not giving any value right here and if I'm doing register, mark here that the inside parse method of the phone number formatter didn't get called whenever I hit the submit button, isn't it? So here is a takeaway. If you are not providing any value right here inside the phone number text box, and if you're hitting register phone number formatter parse method, here the flow is not going, okay? This parse method or this print method will only come to picture whenever there is a need to format something. But in this case, if I'm not giving any value right here, then there is no need of a formatter. That's because there is no value. Then why should unnecessary the formatter, print method or parse method will be get called? So remember that only when there is some value inside the phone number, at that time the formatter will be get called. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's validate this particular phone number field. What if I have a business rule? If there will be no value inside the phone number text box, then the user should not able to register the form. In this case, I am going to the next page and there is no error message right here. So I want to validate my phone number field and I want to do some form validation, and in case there is no number right here, I should give some error message right here that hey, the phone number cannot be blank. So let's do it.
Okay, so congratulations for completing this session, and right now it's my turn. I need to edit the video and I need to create a new one, okay? And I'll be back pretty soon, okay? I'll be back within a week, no worry. By the next 5 days or by the next 7 days, for sure I'm going to post a new video and we are going to write our custom validation annotation, okay? Our custom annotation to validate the form, okay? You remember the form validation? We have used @not_blank, @size and all this annotation. How to create one of the annotation by yourself, okay? We will create some custom validation constraint by ourselves, and that is going to be pretty much important because in the interview they're going to ask you about it, okay? So keep waiting, because in the next video we will create our own annotation, our custom annotation, which is pretty much important for a real-time project. We'll be creating them in the next video by ourselves, okay? No help from anybody. So I'll see you in the next video. Till then, bye-bye, take care and happy coding. Well, let me tell you that. Don't forget to write your doubt in the Selenium Express support group if you have any. Second thing, you can follow me on the Instagram, promoting my Instagram account because I've just created it. Okay, you can follow me on Instagram, Abhilash Selenium_express. That's my Insta ID. Go there and follow it. And you are going to get all these courses pretty soon live on seleniumexpress.com. So that site is going to be back soon. I'm working pretty hard for that, okay? You can experience all these courses right there with quizzes and materials. Cool. So that's what I want to say. Hopefully you guys will have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye. See you in the next video.